Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Pressure Equipment Directive in the U.S. Market. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so that you know how to participate in this virtual event. You've joined the presentation listening through your computer speaker system by default. If you prefer to join audio over the phone, just select phone call in the audio section of the GoToWebinar control panel, and the dial-in information will be displayed. Throughout the presentation, you can submit questions by typing them into the questions box of your control panel. We will address them during the Q&A portion at the end. A handout has been provided and can be accessed through the handout section of your control panel. To access that, click on the title and it will open in a new window, and then from there you can save or print it. And I would now like to introduce your hosts, Paris Mintz-Artis, ISL Technical and Quality Manager, U.S. Operations, LRQA, and Dwayne Alquist, Business Development Manager, Inspection Services, USA and Canada, LRQA. Welcome, Paris and Dwayne.
Hello, everyone. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you.
So, PED, as all other European directives, is applicable to the European Economic Area, which consists of EU member states, the countries in blue color on the map, plus Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway, which consists the European Free Trade Association. These three countries implement the EU laws but have no voting rights on their formulation. Switzerland has separate agreements with EU on implementation of the individual EU laws. What is the Pressure Equipment Directive? PED is aimed at harmonizing regulations across Europe pertaining to pressure equipment assemblies of pressure equipment with maximum allowable pressure greater than 0.5 bar. However, even when the maximum allowable pressure is greater than 0.5 bar, not all pressure equipment fall under the scope of PED. There are 21 exceptions listed in point 2, Article 1 of the directive. Few examples are simple pressure vessels covered by the Simple Pressure Vessel Directive, transportable pressure equipment, equipment specifically designed for nuclear use, failure of which may cause emission of radioactivity, engines, including turbines and internal combustion engines, steam engines, gas or steam turbines, turbogenerator, compressors, pumps, and actuating devices. Vessels designed to contain liquids with a gas pressure above the liquid of not more than 0.5 bar. Please also note that PED does not deal with in-service requirements, which may be necessary to ensure the continued safe use of pressure equipment. What equipment falls under PED? These are pressure vessels, heat exchanger, horizontal or vertical pressure vessels, boilers, steam generators, fire extinguishers, pressure cookers, piping components, valves, actuators, pressure regulators, pressure or safety relief valves, and bursting or rupture discs, to name few, as well as assemblies, which could range from simple assemblies such as a pressure cooker and fire extinguisher to a complex assemblies such as water tube boilers, industrial installations, like refineries or chemical plants. Dwayne, over to you, sir, for this slide.
Thank you, Paris. Appreciate it. Well, you may be asking yourself, what are the benefits of certification? Well, there's several major ones. First one would be expanded markets and access to international recognition. And you do this by achieving compliance. You're able to expand and reach your organization's market and show global organizations that you're a serious player in this market. The second one would be legal compliance, very important one here. By complying to this standard, you will ensure that you will not be found out of compliance and have to face fines or loss of business, which can be very significant. Also, mitigating risk. By complying with PED, you'll ensure that you not only limit your risk and legal issues pertaining to compliance, but you'll mitigate them for future and for your clients. Also, the last one would be quality assurance. We're going to ensure the quality and efficacy of your organization's products to make sure that your customers are compliant with the PED and happy with the quality that they receive. Moving on to the next slide, please, Paris. Okay. Well, who are the economic operator roles? Well, they're the manufacturer. As you can see here, they're any natural or legal person who manufactures pressure equipment and or assembly or has such equipment or assembly designed or manufactured and markets that pressure equipment or assembly under his name or trademark. or uses it for his own purpose. Then we also have the conformity assessment body. This is any natural or legal person appointed by a member state and that performs conformity assessment activities, including calibration, testing, certification, and of course, inspection. Thirdly, we have the authorized representative. This is any natural or legal person established within the union who has received a written mandate from a manufacturer to act on his behalf in relation to a specified task. And fourth of all, we have the importer. That's any natural or legal person established within the union who places pressure or assemblies from a third country on the union market. And lastly, the distributor. This is any natural or legal person in the supply chain, other than the manufacturer importer, who places pressure equipment or assemblies on the market. Thank you, Paris. Back to you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, Dwayne. We will talk about the essential safety requirements of the directive. The essential safety requirements are detailed in the Annex 1 of PED, and we could say that they are the technical part of the directive. They have several sections. First are the preliminary observations according to which the manufacturer has to analyze the hazards and risks in order to identify those which apply to his equipment due to pressure. He must then design and fabricate the equipment based on his analysis. As general requirements, we have the protection principles. As per design, the equipment must be designed for adequate strength and safety in operations. Manufacturing covers inspection requirements, permanent joining, testing and marking, as well as the operating instructions the manufacturer must provide. There are specific requirements for materials, and we will discuss them later in more detail. The specific pressure equipment requirements cover fire or otherwise heated equipment with a risk of overheating and piping. And last but not least, there are specific quantitative requirements for certain pressure equipment which cover allowable stresses, test pressure, joining coefficients, pressure limiting devices, ductility, and toughness. The product classification. How do we classify the pressure equipment under PED? To know how PED will apply to specific items of pressure equipment, the equipment must be classified by category according to its perceived level of hazard due to pressure. Equipment of relatively low hazard will be required to be manufactured according to sound engineering practice or SEP. Equipment that is classified as a higher hazard than sound engineering practice is required to meet the relevant essential safety requirements and on that account to be CE marked. It is allocated in ascending order of that hazard to one of the categories 1, 2, 3, or 4. Please note that PED is a risk-based directive. The higher the risk, the more the involvement of the notified body. Please also bear in mind that SEP equipment cannot be CE marked against PED. The following table summarizes which charts or tables should be used for the various types of equipment. Here we have the product classification. There are 9 charts. 1 through 4 are for pressure vessels. 5 is for steam generators, and 6 through 9 are for piping. To select which chart is applicable to a pressure equipment, we need to know the state of its content, if it's gas or liquid, as we can see here, and the fluid group, 1 or 2. 1 is for dangerous fluids such as toxic, corrosive, flammable, explosive, lethal, etc., and 2 is for anything else not in group 1. As an example, if we have an unfired pressure vessel according to ASME Section 8 Division 1 for propane, which is gas group 1, then the relevant chart, as we can see, is 1. Having decided which chart applies to our pressure equipment, and by knowing the maximum allowable pressure and volume for vessels or nominal diameter for piping, we can calculate the risk category of the equipment. For the calculation of risk category, LRQA has created a PED calculator which is available for use to cell phones, tablets, laptops, and desktops. Dwayne, I'm handing over to you to say a few more words about our PED calculator.
Thank you, Paris. Let's see. It looks like the pressure equipment calculator here has been on the LRQA website for the last few years. It's one of our most popular downloads, and it's really been beneficial from the feedback we've received from our customers. In fact, we even offer a lot of training that comes out of the PED calculator as we follow up with the customer after they've done their calculations and see what actual products they need from LRQA. But excellent product, great feedback, and That's what I have on the PED calculator. Thanks, Paris.
Thank you. Now we are moving to the conformity assessment modules. There are 12 conformity assessment procedures or modules. All modules except Module A require notified body involvement. Each module describes what the manufacturer must do to demonstrate compliance with PED, as well as the level of involvement of the notified body. What are its obligations and what examination and tests are required? There are standalone modules such as A, A2, G, H, H1, or combination of modules such as B design plus D, B production plus F, etc. Module B is a type examination module and can be either design type or production type. On design type, the notified body must examine the design of the pressure equipment, whilst on production type, in addition to the design examination, the notified body must also witness the type tests. On this table, we have the modules a manufacturer can select to demonstrate compliance to PED depending the risk category of his equipment. There are a couple of factors to be considered, like series production or unit production, and if the manufacturer operates a PED-compliant quality management system or not. The pressure equipment manufacturer can select a higher category module if he wants to, and as an example, for category 2 equipment, instead of selecting module A2, D1, or E1, he could select H or BD plus F or BD plus D. Certification of welding and other permanent joining. Permanent joining of components which contribute to the pressure resistance of equipment and components which are directly attached to them shall be carried out by suitably qualified personnel according to suitable operating procedures. For pressure equipment and assemblies of category 2, 3, and 4, all welding procedures and personnel must be approved by a notified body or a recognized third-party organization. If non-European harmonized standards have been selected for the qualification of welding procedures and of welders or weld operators, like ASME Section 9, then additional tests must be carried out according to the relevant European harmonized standards, since PED asks for equivalent examination and tests. Please note that permanent joining is not just welding. Could be other types of joining such as brazing, expansion, gluing, fritage, or riveting. We have specific requirements for materials. The pressure equipment manufacturer must select materials as part of his design process. The selected material must meet the relevant essential safety requirements, must be certified and traceable to the original mill certificate. The pressure equipment manufacturer must provide in his technical documentation elements relating to the compliance with the material specification of the directive in one of the following forms: by using materials which comply with European harmonized standards, or by using materials covered by a European approval for materials. Very few materials are covered by a European approval, and in case this is required, the notified body must be involved. The materials approved through this process are listed in the PED webpage of the European Union. And the third option is by a particular material appraisal. PMA is the most common way for approval of non-European harmonized grades, such as ASME or ASTM materials. For equipment in categories 3 and 4, PMAs must be approved by the notified body in charge. Hence, PMAs are part of the design documentation the pressure equipment manufacturer must submit to the notified body for review and approval. As we said, materials must be certified and traceable to the original mill certificate. For main pressure-bearing parts of equipment in categories 2, 3, and 4, the certification must take the form of specific product control. In practice, this means type 3.1 or 3.2 material certificate per EN 10204. Where material manufacturers have an appropriate quality assurance system certified by a competent body established within the Union and having undergone a specific assessment for materials, certificates issued by the manufacturer are pursuant to certify conformity with the relevant requirements of this point. We would like to clarify that this requirement is applicable to the material manufacturer, such as steel mills, pipe mills, foundries, forging shops, and etc., and not to the pressure equipment manufacturer. Dwayne, over to you, sir.
All right, thanks, Paris. This slide is discussing notified body's involvement. So LRQA is a notified body, and this this flow here may or may not apply to you depending on the level that you're required to get for your PED, but we'll go through all of them right now anyway. Usually from the beginning, we do the design review or appraisal, and that will lead to the inspection side of it, where you get boots on the ground there usually. And then the surveillance of production or inspection and quality assurance that gets involved. Then we have the approval of permanent joining, the procedures and operations. And then approval of non-destructive testing or NDT operators. Then we move on to material certification and assessment of your PMAs, your Cat 3s and Cat 4s. Finally, you're moving on to European approval of materials. And lastly, the notified body's involvement increases with the pressure risk of each category. So please keep that in mind. Thank you, Paris.
Thank you. And equipment marking and labeling. Point 3.3 of Annex 1 of PED details the marking and labeling requirements. For all pressure equipment, the following information must be provided: name and address of manufacturer or importer, the year of manufacture, the identification of the pressure equipment like a serial number or type number or batch number or model, whatever it is applicable, the essential minimum and maximum allowable limits such as min and max temperature, design pressure, etc. Furthermore, other information depending on the type of equipment shall be provided, as well as any other information or warnings necessary for the safe operation. Please note that CE marking signifies compliance with all applicable EU directives. Therefore, the pressure equipment manufacturer must consider other EU directives which might be applicable to his equipment. If a notified body has been involved in the certification process based on the selected module, then his 4-digit identification number must be placed next to the CE mark. And then we have the EU Declaration of Conformity, which is detailed on the Annex 4 of the directive. EU Declaration of Conformity is a document that is issued from the equipment manufacturer and must be available and presented to the authorities and the end user. In this, we have the name and address of the manufacturer, the description of pressure equipment or assembly, the conformity assessment procedure followed, this is the module, the name and address of the notified body as well as his identification number, a reference to any EU certification applicable, the harmonized standards used, if they have used during the certification process, like for design or inspection and testing of the equipment. Other standards applied, in this case, could be non-harmonized standards like ISME Section 9 or Section 8 or any other well-known code used for design and fabrication. Other applicable EU directives, any reference to EU type examination certificate or other certificates have been issued for the compliance. And at the end, we have the particulars of the patient who is signing the EU declaration on behalf of the manufacturer. And now we can move to the Q&A session. And Karen, over to you, please.
All right, thank you both gentlemen for your presentation, and we're now going to begin answering any questions you have for our panelists. And as a reminder, you can submit your questions by typing them into the questions box of your control panel. So let's take a look at the first question. Beyond regulatory compliance, what are the broader benefits our organization can gain from complying to the PED for our pressure equipment?
I can respond. Regulatory compliance itself is mandatory, first of all. We have to mention that. Otherwise, pressure equipment manufacturers cannot place their products in the European market. Besides that, we have seen cases where PED certification is required for products which are not going to Europe. This means that PED compliance is perceived from the market as a proof that CE-mark equipment meets the highest standards of safety and integrity. And this certainly can be a door open to new opportunities.
Great, thank you. Our next question, which types of pressure equipment are covered by the PED and how do we determine if our products fall within the scope?
As we said, PED covers pressure vessels, heat exchangers, pipe components, pressure accessories, valve, safety accessories, etc. However, there are limitations. The first is the maximum allowable pressure to be greater than 0.5 bar. The second is the pressure equipment to not fall within one or more of the 21 exemptions of PED, which are listed in point 2, Article 1 of the directive. If your equipment is not limited for any of those exclusions, then you have to determine the hazard risk category and then select a conformity assessment procedure or module to demonstrate compliance. For the risk classification, you can use the LRQA PED calculator, which is available for cell phones, as we said, tablets, laptops, and desktops. I guess at the end of this webinar, we will provide to all attendees the link how and instructions how they can download these through the App Store or any other platforms available.
Great. Okay, lots of good questions coming in. Next one, are there any other standards, certifications, or inspection services that align with PED or should be considered to ensure supply chain safety and efficiency?
Yeah, we have to clarify, first of all, that PED is not a design standard, it's a regulation, and manufacturers can select any well-known national or international standard for the design, fabrication, and testing of their pressure equipment and address the applicable essential safety requirements of the directive. Attention should be paid on materials, as PED sets specific requirements of the supply of materials when they are from the main parachute-bearing parts of equipment in categories 2, 3, and 4. Another point is the qualification of permanent joints, where the testing program for the qualification procedure and personnel is more extensive if non-European harmonized standards such as ASME Section 9 has been selected. If pressure equipment manufacturer has selected a quality module for compliance, then he shall operate an approved quality system. And while PED does not dictate ISO 9001 or other well-accepted QMS certification scheme, holding such a certification is a good starting point to get his QMS PED compliant. I want to clarify that if a pressure equipment manufacturer holds an ISO 9000 certificate, it doesn't mean that it's automatically PED compliant. Most likely, a number of processes and procedures must be reviewed and revised to address the PED requirements. It is recommended you will always ask LRQA, being your notified body.
Thank you. All right, another question. How does the PED categorize different types of pressure equipment, and does the certification process vary depending on the category?
PED is risk-based. The higher the risk category of the pressure equipment, the more the involvement of the notified body. We saw there are 9 conformity assessment tables or charts. 1 through 4 are for pressure vessel, 5 is for steam generator, 6 through 9 for pipe. The certification process depends on the conformity assessment process the pressure equipment manufacturer has selected to demonstrate compliance. For the risk hazard classification, you can use the LRQA PED calculator, which mentioned earlier.
Great, thank you. Next question, what documentation is required to demonstrate ongoing PED compliance, and how should our organization maintain and update these records?
Good question. For each product that is CE marked against PED must be a technical file with design calculations, drawings, hazard risk analysis, the PMAs, the essential safety requirements checklist, operating instruction, fabrication records like material certificates, qualified joining procedures and personnel certificates, if applicable, of course, entity records, again, if this is applicable, test reports, etc. Furthermore, if a pressure equipment manufacturer operates a QMS following a quality module, then all relevant processes and procedures must be up to date and in compliance with PED. Worth to mention that PED talks about state of the art. This means pressure equipment manufacturers must always consider the latest edition of the design and fabrication codes and standards and update their records accordingly. Another point is that manufacturers must keep for a minimum of 10 years after the pressure equipment has been placed on the market the technical files and PED documentation.
Great. Next question, how does the documentation process evolve as our products or processes change over time?
It has required technical design files to be up to date, as well as any processes and procedures related to PED compliance. Therefore, if there are any changes in product design, manufacturing process and procedures, the relevant documentation will not be updated accordingly, and when a notified body is involved in the certification process, the changes, updates must be communicated to the notified body as approval might be required. Furthermore, as mentioned earlier, PED asks for state-of-the-art. Therefore, pressure equipment manufacturers must take into account any changes on the applicable design codes and standards and update their technical documentation accordingly.
All right, I think this is our last question. What are the fundamental steps our organization needs to take to ensure compliance with the PED?
I would summarize with the following. First, does your equipment fall within the scope of PED? We said maximum allowable pressure greater than 0.5 bar plus consideration of the exemptions in Article 1.2. If yes, then define the hazard risk category. The LRQA PED calculator is very good, reliable, and user-friendly tool for risk classification. Then, having defined the risk category, you have to select the conformity assessment procedure or module and reach out to LRQA, your notified body, if notified body involvement is required. And then you have to follow the requirements of the selected module for compliance. At the end of this process, you have to place the CE mark on the nameplate and issue the declaration of conformity.
Great, thank you so much, Paris. And that wraps up our Q&A. Are there any final thoughts from our presenters?
Go ahead, Paris.
Great.
Yeah. Yes, I have some final thoughts, of course, Paris. I really appreciate that informative presentation of PED. I always learn something new when I'm speaking with you. Much appreciated, like I said. I'd like to focus more on this number 7, the fundamental steps organization needs here to ensure your compliance. Well, one, like you mentioned, get in touch with your notified body. And hopefully your notified body is LRQA. If it's not, then we would love to earn your business. Paris and I stand by waiting for our customers that call us, and we are proactive, reach out to them. We respond immediately. So if your notified body's not doing that and you're feeling left behind, LRQA is there for you. PED is just one of the many valued options that the LRQA can give you as a customer. So we're there to support you along the way through inspection side, through business assurance side, and definitely with PED. So at the end of this, feel free to reach out to myself or Paris via LinkedIn. We have a phone number here on our last slide. Feel free to call us and ask for us, and we'll be there to help you guys out. So really appreciate your attendance and watching this with us. And Paris, is over to you one more time.
Thank you. Just a final comment from my side as well. If in doubt or you have any questions, we are here to help you. So please don't hesitate. As Glenn said, call us, email us, text us, and we will support you. Thank you.
Well, thank you both again, Paris and Dwayne, for the presentation. An email with a link to the recording will be sent out to all attendees within about 2 to 3 business days. And on behalf of LRQA, we'd like to thank you for taking the time to join our session, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.